I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC 303, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. And I always say this every single week, the thumbnail gives it away. My biggest stock riser on this card is Diego Lopez. Now, look, I know a lot of people would have put Alex Pereira as the number one stock riser on this card, but let's look at the optics here. Diego Lopez takes a short notice fight against Brian Ortega, supposed to be at 145, then it gets moved to 155, and then he gets an opponent switch up like the day of, hours, I should say, before he's supposed to fight. That is a big stock riser in the eyes of the fans, the fact that he kept saying yes and yes and yes. And you heard Dana White at the press conference after the fact, mentioning that Diego Lopez, if he wants to fight on the Sphere, he's in good graces. I mean, he has certainly won over the UFC very much. And I think whatever Lopez wants next, he's probably going to get it from the UFC. But the biggest thing is that he won, right? Like, if Lopez had lost, I mean, that's going to suck. I know the fight was at 165, but still, Lopez had a lot to lose here, right? He had some nice momentum coming into this fight with Ortega. Beating Ortega would have done wonders for him. He fights Dan Ige, who's right around the same ranking. So to me, Lopez gets the biggest stock rise on this card because everyone's just so happy that he stayed on the card. He ended up fighting, and he ended up winning too. And he looked good in that fight as well. And again, for both guys to not have any time really to prepare, I thought Lopez was one of the big stars. And again, you could just hear how Dana White was talking about Diego Lopez. He is a guy that's going to get a nice push here from the UFC. You look at, making his debut against Ivoyev, what was it, last year, 4 straight wins now. I mean, again, I think he was the biggest stock riser on this card. So Diego Lopez getting my number one pick here. Now, second, obviously, it's Alex Pereira. Another knockout win here, defeating Yuri Prochazka. Not much to say here. I mean, I pretty much said this fight was going to go how it was. I was off by a round. I said third round finish, but second round knockout for Alex Pereira. I mean, you could just tell, even after that, at the end of the first, he drops Yuri. I mean, it could have been over right then and there. And then in the second round, he lands that head kick and ends up knocking out Yuri Prochazka. So again, who's going to stop this guy? I mean, this is why I want to see the Ankalaev fight. Can he get a takedown on Pereira? We'll see. Can he take a Pereira punch? A lot of fighters can't take a Pereira punch. So certainly interesting. I mean, this is shades of Chuck Liddell back when he was fighting, knocking everyone out in the weight class, and Pereira's doing the same thing. And you have to wonder, like, is this guy ever going to lose at light heavyweight? So again, Pereira, he was the talk of the town last night. Even Joe Rogan talking about him moving up to heavyweight and fighting, like I said, up at heavyweight potentially after this. I mean, there's a lot of big things ahead here for Pereira. The only reason I put Lopez ahead is just because Lopez was, he's not a champion. He was a guy that, was on a nice win streak, but again, still took advantage of this opportunity and won the fans over. Pereira for me is number 2. But if you want to go number 1 for Pereira, I don't have an issue here either. This was really tough. We actually have a lot of stock risers on this card, so I'll get to some more here as well. Let's talk about one of the other stock risers here. And look, I know the fight didn't end cleanly, and people might have thought it was, should have continued, but Macy Chiasson, give her flowers. Macy Chiasson now back-to-back wins. Look, she cut open Silva. Whether they let the fight go on or not, I don't think Silva was going to win with that much blood coming down. It was pretty gruesome as far as the cut goes. She might be in line for a title here soon. It looks like they're going to do Raquel Pennington, Juliana Pena, but I don't think Macy Chiasson's that far behind. You consider the layoff she had, the health issues, talked about this a lot. I mean, the reason that she is, a stock riser for me is that this is a division that is wide open right now. So for Chiasson to go in there and get the win as an underdog, you got to put her as a stock riser on this card. I know the first round was a bit even, and then it looked like obviously Chiasson was taken over when she got the elbow. But you got to give her flowers here. Macy Chiasson in a great position in the bantamweight division. Her stock certainly went up. So that's my top 3. Now, we got a lot of honorable mentions here on this card. I don't normally do this many, but it's really hard to ignore some of the other names on here. Start with Dan Ige. I mean, again, he will be a legend forever for doing this, taking this on short notice, hours notice, and weighing in. Lives in Las Vegas. He gets the call. He goes to take the fight. Props to Dan Ige. And also, Dan might be one of the nicest guys I've ever interacted with in this industry. Really great dude. You hear about the fighters talk about him. Just a great guy. So his stock went up just because he's going to be a fan favorite forever after doing this. So how could you not? Yeah, he lost the fight, but I mean, pretty tough to fight Diego Lopez on a couple hours. Even on short notice, it's tough to fight Diego Lopez. I think Lopez is the real deal. Dan Ige, great fighter. I don't know if he'll ever get to a title shot, but he cemented himself as a legend last night. And that's something, I mean, if you want to look back in the history books on UFC 303, this is going to be one of the big talking points is Dan Ige stepping up. So his stock certainly went up. Another guy whose stock went up was Roman Dolidze. Look, underdog against Anthony Smith. He gets a decision win here. Great win. I mean, he had Smith in every one of the rounds. Actually, it looks like he did close as the favorite, but either way, I thought just, dominant win. Didn't even look like a minus 140 favorite. It looked like a minus 300 favorite. I don't think Smith had anything in this fight. Dolidze did, moving up a weight class on short notice as well. Again, had to travel from Georgia to take the fight. He's definitely got to be a stock riser on this card, getting a win over Anthony Smith, who, again, is, is a veteran, has way more experience than him as far as MMA fights. So Dolidze now says he wants to fight at 205 and 185. We'll see where he goes from here, but that's a big win for him as well. Got to mention a couple of the finishes on this card. Joe Pyfer knocking out Marc-Andre Barriault. Obviously, a lot of people writing him off, using the whole fraud check, shtick after him losing to Jack Hermanson. Look, he was expected to win, but this is what you need. You need to go out there and you need to get a highlight reel finish, and that's what he did in this fight, finishing power bar. I think Marc-Andre Barriault's last knockout loss, I think, was like 2019. Got to look here. 2022, sorry. So a little bit ahead, but still a couple of years ago. So, Pyfer goes out, gets the job done, had a great post-fight interview. This is a guy that you want to keep an eye on in the middleweight division. I thought he, came across great in everything this week. And again, the performance spoke for itself. So Joe Pyfer, a big stock riser as well. Got to mention Peyton Talbot. One thing I'll say about this, and I'm actually going to do another video on UFC 303 a little bit later this week, but I mean, he was like a minus 1600 favorite. So he was supposed to do this, but I mean, 19-second knockout. Are you kidding me? Like, that's the type of stuff that, look at Masvidal knocking out Askren. Like, you get a quick win like this, people are going to remember that. So Talbot's an interesting guy. You heard him in the post fight, very sort of like chill dude, not like, I wouldn't say like a hardcore like fight fan at all, just a guy who happens to be good at fighting, and he showed that against Giannis in this fight. So again, Talbot's got to get a shutout. His stock went up just because, again, he got a quick finish. Like, he's a minus 1600 favorite. We all expected him to win, but to do it in 19 seconds, that certainly puts your stock up. And then I'll do one more here, and that is Vinicius Oliveira coming in and taking out Ricky Simone. He was an underdog in this fight, plus 210. Simone, a veteran. He looked good. I was impressed with the fight. I liked the post-fight interview. He called out Umar. I mean, might be a little bit, it's definitely biting off a little bit more than he can chew, but hey, making some noise. I don't mind it. And again, really good performance over Ricky Simone, who, again, Simone's been in the UFC for a while. Oliveira, there's back-to-back wins for him now in the UFC, right? If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, he's definitely a stock riser on this card as well. So again, a lot of honorable mentions to Surya as well. We could maybe throw in there too. A lot of talk about his performance as well, the ground game. So yeah, this was, listen, for a card that, I don't think was one of the most memorable cards of all time. I thought it was a decent card overall. There were a lot of fighters that certainly, rose to the occasion. So that's your stock risers. Let's talk about your stock droppers. Now, unfortunately, this one, it's a bummer. Yuri Prochazka. And I said this going into the fight. Now, the reason Yuri's stock is so low is because he's basically screwed at this point for the 205-pound division. As long as Alex Pereira is champion, he's not going to get a title fight. So he's in this Max Holloway limbo, although it obviously has worked out well for Holloway now, with Topuria winning the title. Robert Whittaker was in this situation with Adesanya being champion and losing twice. He's in this kind of murky waters right now, and this was one of the risks I said about putting this fight together, is that the UFC, while, yes, the fans got a great main event on Saturday night, like, Yuri's career is kind of in a tough spot right now, losing this fight. That's, he's now lost 2 of his last 3, both to Alex Pereira, both stoppage losses. Like, I know there's talk about him going to middleweight, but like I mentioned in the Discord chat, if you guys are on Patreon with me, if he's cutting more weight and for a guy who gets hit as much as he does, is that really a good idea? And then, I think he's too small for heavyweight. So I don't know what Yuri does here. And I know some people are already starting to match him up in the light heavyweight division. I just don't know like what happens. Like, you're basically hoping that Pereira is going to be out of the title picture. And I know Pereira's older and maybe he does end up leaving the division sooner than we think, but I don't know. I just think that for Yuri right now, he's in such a tough spot. Like, I don't really know where he goes from here. So to me, he's the biggest stock dropper, just for the sense of like, he can't fight for a title as long as Alex Pereira is champion, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think people are going to debate me too much on that. The other stock dropper on this card was Anthony Smith. Again, he had that really good submission win over, the Brazilian Pereira. And then he just got completely shut out by Roman Dolidze. Now, look, I know this is short notice, so I'm going to cut Smith some slack. But he just didn't there was no danger for Dolidze in this fight. I mean, I just felt like Dolidze was in complete control. He's not a regular in the weight class, so Dolidze moves up on short notice, takes out Smith. Again, I'm aware of the optics here, but I just look at Smith overall. He's now lost a number of fights here. So it's he's won 2 of his last, 5? Yeah, 2 of his last 5 fights. He's only won 2 of his last 5 fights. So that's, the Glover fight's in there. So 2 of his last 4. It's going to be tough to see where Smith goes from here. Again, if this fight was more competitive, I might not say as big of a stock drop here for Smith, but I just thought Dolidze was in complete control, and Smith back to the drawing board for him. And then the other stock dropper on this card, and look, it sucks, but this is part of fighting, Mayra Bueno Silva. We're talking about someone who had a really good win over Holly Holm, gets a suspension, or no contest, I should say, because of the ADD medication, and then she still gets the title shot against Pennington. Didn't have a good fight in that one. Now, granted, she was injured early in that one, and then loses to Chiasson, where she was a favorite. I'm trying to even remember how much of a favorite she was coming in. But it's just the optics mainly. Oh, no, so they were about even when it closed. Okay, so that's interesting. But it's just the optics of it. Like, this is a wide open division. You just lost to a girl who's now going to be ahead of you. Like, where does she go from here at this point? 32 years old. It's going to be tough for her to get back to the title picture. And she's probably going to be out for a bit with that cut. That was pretty gruesome. So we'll see. But yeah, Bueno Silva, considering that she was like I said, could have won the title in her the fight previous to this one, has now lost 2 in a row. That's kind of tough there for Mayra Bueno Silva. Okay, let's get to some honorable mentions. I'm going to keep this quick because I got to wrap things up. Guys, by the way, I just landed, just so you guys know. So this is the dedication I give to this channel here. I wanted to get this video out because I'm actually going camping. No Q&A tomorrow. I'll mention that at the end. Honorable mentions for stock droppers. Michael Venom Page. Look, he was the underdog in this one, I think. Let me just double check. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was. Page was not supposed to win this one. He was plus 160, but it's just the fact that, it was close. Like, he almost had it. I thought there were some small mistakes, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a loss in the UFC's 1-1. I think this was a fight that he could have capitalized on, because if he would have beat Gary, I mean, we're talking about him potentially being in that contender spot, or at least like close to it. So, and at 37, you can't afford to have losses right now. Again, I know Ian Gary's pretty good. I'll talk about him in a separate video, but just a missed opportunity. So I think that's why Page's stock has dropped now, because again, I know the fight was close, and I know some people even felt like Page won. I'm not one of those. I thought Gary won. But I just think overall, if you look at the optics, Page is now 1-1 in the UFC for a 37-year-old. That's pretty tough to do. And the last one here is Charles Jourdain. And I give Jourdain some slack here just because Gene Silva missed weight. I have a big issue with that. But it's the fact that Jourdain got knocked out. And now, you look at his record. He has now lost, 4 of his last 6, 2 in a row, getting knocked out here. First knockout loss in the UFC. That's a tough pill to swallow for a fighter who's 28. And, there's not a lot of Canadians in the UFC. So this was a big blow from that aspect. But yes, Jourdain getting knocked out certainly has dropped his stock. So, like I always say every single week for you guys, please tell me your top 3 stock risers and top 3 stock droppers. It's very easy to say your picks suck or whatever. Please give me your solutions. That's what I want to have a discussion here, honestly. Like, I want to hear what you guys saw last night at 303 that maybe I didn't, or maybe you agree with me on something, or maybe you don't. Let's have a fun debate about this, but give me your 3 top stock risers, top stock droppers in the comments. Quick note, I just mentioned it there. I'm not going to be going live tomorrow on my Q&A. I'm going to be camping. I'm just leaving right now, actually. So I'm giving up family time to do this video for you guys, just FYI. So yeah, I'm going camping, but I'll be back tomorrow evening, just going camping for the one night. My family's been there since Thursday. And that's pretty much it, guys. So I will be back live on Tuesday doing a Q&A. So look on the community tab for what time that will be at. And make sure you hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.